Done right, cost seg doesn't just help on this property, it have fun and structure your next one. That's the big idea for this lesson. Up to now in this course, we have mostly looked at cost segregation at the single property level. You buy or improve a property, you reclassify component into faster bucket, right? You get bigger deduction earlier and your current tax bill drop and your cash flow look a lot nicer. That's all good. But most serious investors are not buying one lonely property and call it a day. You are building a chain of deals over years. So you're trading up, you're scaling, and that's where 1031 exchanges showed up. In this lesson, I'm going to talk to you like a fellow investor who has also happened to live in the tax code. We are going to keep it simple, but we are going to connect dots most people never connect. How cost seg on the property you sell interacts with the property you 1031 exchange into, and how those depreciation numbers are building gains follow you from deal to deal. By the end, I don't want you to ask the cost seg help me on this property. I want you asking, how can cost seg plus 1031 exchange together help me build my next property and the one after that? So first, let's ground ourselves. What is a 1031 exchange and why do investors care so much? So part one of this lesson, what 1031 exchange really is. Under the current rules, if you sell investment real estate and reinvest the proceeds into other qualifying real estate, you may be able to defer tax on the gain and on the depreciation recapture. You cannot avoid it forever. Defer is the key here. You are pushing the tax hit forward into the next property instead of taking it all in the chin right now. The key phase, the code you is like kind exchange. So in practice, that means you are giving up on one investment property that is your relinquished property, and you're acquiring another investment property that is your replacement property. But it's not just a casual swap, right? You got strict timing rules, identification rules, and you have to use a qualified intermediary so you don't actually cut the cash in the middle. Why do investors love this so much? Because without a 1031, when you sell, two big things usually show up on your tax return. First, is capital gain. That is the increase in value between what you got in and what you got out. Second, depreciation recapture. Your favorite, right? Which is the IRS basically saying, hey, remember auto depreciation deduction we let you take, including accelerated one from a cost seg. So we want to settle up on those now, right? So with a properly structured 1031, you can sell, reinvest to that qualified intermediary and defer recognizing both the gain and a big chunk of that recapture. So instead of sending a large check to the IRS at each exit, you keep more capital working inside your portfolio. Now, layer cost segregation on top of that, and it stop being just a one-off tax move and start looking like a long-term strategy, right? Let's talk about what really happened when you done a cost seg on the property you are selling. So this is our part two, cost seg on the relinquished property. What is going on under the hood? Imagine you own a property where you did a cost seg study a few years ago. You reclassify a big chunk of the building into the 5-year, 7-year, and 15-year property. You may have taken a large bonus depreciation deduction under the current law, so your cash flow benefited. Your tax bill dropped in those early years. Now you are thinking about selling that property. If you sell without 1031, all of that accelerated depreciation is sitting there in the background, right? So the gain from the sale plus the depreciation recapture come crashing onto your return in the year you sell. So depending on the numbers, that can be a painful check. But if you do a properly structured 1031 exchange, the story changes now, right? So the gain and the recapture are forgiven. That's really important for you to remember. It's not forgiven, but they can be deferred and carried into the replacement property instead of all that hitting you right now. So think of it like this. So cost seg give you bigger deduction earlier when you own the property. The 1031 exchange lets you keep playing the game when you sell by rolling the building gain and the depreciation history into the next deal. That's the interplay we care about, right? So cost-sec front-load deduction while you own. 1031 defers your tax shock when you trade up instead of just cashing out. To really see what's happening, we need to talk about how the number actually moved into the replacement property. Now with part 3. How depreciation and gain move into the replacement property. At a high level, when you do a 1031, you do not get a fresh, clean basis on the replacement property, right? A piece of that new property tax basis is basically carrying forward the old property tax history. You defer gain from the old property to get embedded into the new one. Your prior depreciation, including everything you accelerated with cost-sec, is still remembered. So inside that number. On the code gonna keep track even if you don't. So fast forward to the day you eventually sell the property without doing another 1031. At that point, the IRS look back at the entire chain, honor that roll forward gain and all the depreciation you took along the way, and it's all get baked into the gain and recapture calculation on that final exit. Why does that matter? Because now you can see the combo move, right? Cost-sec on property A give you big deduction early, 1031 into property B keep you from immediately paying payback tax from selling A, and now property B become the new container that hold all of that deferred gain and depreciation history. If you repeat that over and over, A to B, B to C, C to D, you are building yourself a tax. You are using cost-sec to optimize deduction. You are using 1031 to defer that moment when your full tax bill comes due. Let's talk some story, right? Give you some example. Let's move to our part 4. Let's give you some example of pairing cost-sec and 1031 across multiple property. So example 1 is a single upgrade. So you buy 600K rental. You do a cost-sec study. You move a big chunk into 5 and 15-year property. Over several years, you have taken, say, 200K of depreciation, including a large first-year deduction. Now the market moves. You got a chance to sell and buy a bigger, like say 1.5 million property. So you basically got 2 paths. So path 1, you sell without 1031. You recognize the gain and the depreciation recapture from that 600K property, and the big number land on your tax return. You write a big check, then you reinvest what's left. Path 2, you sell with 1031. You line up the replacement property. You follow the timeline and the rules, right? And then you roll that 1.5, you roll into that 1.5 million deal. The gain and the recapture are not wiped away. They are just deferred and locked into the new property. You have effectively jumped from a $600,000 deal to 1.5 million deal with more of your dollars still working for you. In both paths, cost-sec did a job while you own the first property. The difference is whether you choose to settle up now or push that tax event into the future through a 1031. Example 2, laddering over time. Let's say you start with property A, 400K duplex. You do cost-sec. The tax saving help you build reserves, pay down some debt, and position yourself for a bigger loan. After a few years, you 1031 into property B, like say a 900K small apartment building. On B, you do another cost-sec study and again front-load deduction under the current rules. So that improves cash flow and help you qualify for the next step. Several years later, you 1031 exchange gain into property C, a 2 million property. Across the whole sequence, each cost-sec optimize deduction at each stage. Each 1031 defer the full recognition of all that building gain and recapture. Eventually, yes, if you ever exit without another 1031 or without another planning, you will have a big tax event. But at that time, a few things might be different, right? So your income level, your overall strategy, maybe you're thinking about long-term hold and estate planning, maybe you got another tools on the table. The main point I want you to feel here is this. Cost-sec and 1031 are not fighting each other. When you understand them, you can be part of the same, they can be part of your same long-term goal plan. Now let's talk for a minute, right, for the tax pro and advisor who watching it. So part 5, if you are a tax pro, when you should bring cost seg into a 1031 exchange conversion. In the real world, clients usually show up saying, I want to do 1031. Cost seg is often an afterthought or never even mentioned, right? I want you to flip that around a bit and start asking where the cost seg fit into this client's 1031 and long-term real estate strategy. Here's a few key moments, right? First, when a client is considering selling in the next 1 to 3 years, that's a natural time to ask. Between now and that sale, does it make sense to do cost seg on the current property to reduce taxes on these last few high-income years, knowing we might use a 1031 exchange and exit? Second, when a client is already planning a 1031 upgrade, as soon as they land on the replacement property, it's prime time to plan a cost seg study early and maximize deductions, right, on the new asset when the rules are still favorable. Third, when a client is clearly scaling across multiple properties, that where you can stress the simple timeline, buy, cost seg, hold, 1031. So show them how these numbers fund down payment, renovation, and future acquisition. Was about recapture. Instead of dodging that conversation, use the 1031 exchange framework to show that you are not ignoring recapture. You are designing when and how it's likely to show up. So cost seg improve cash flow now. 1031 gives you control over the timing to settle up. Your goal isn't to turn every client into a non-stop exchanger. Your goal is to show that cost seg and 1031 live on the same menu. They are not separate random tactics. They are pieces of wrapped it up and connect it back to your bigger strategy. In this lesson, you saw that 1031 exchange let you defer gains and depreciation recapture by rolling from a relinquished property into a replacement property. Cost seg on the relinquished property doesn't break a 1031, but it means you front load more depreciation before you exchange. When you combine cost seg and 1031, you get a powerful pattern, right? You reduce taxes and you boost cash flow while you own. Then you trade up into larger deals while deferring the big tax hit. Across multiple properties, that turn into a growth ladder. So cost seg optimize each rung, and the 1031 keep more of your capital compounding as you climb. If you are an investor and landlord watching this, your homework is simple, right? Look at your current property and your next couple of deals and ask, where might a 1031 exchange make sense? And where would cost seg meaningfully improve the number along the way? If you're a tax pro, pick 1 or 2 clients who are likely to sell or exchange in the next few years. So instead of treating cost seg and 1031 as 2 separate conversations, you want to stretch out combined plan for them, so property by property, year by year. You're watching this as part of a bigger cost segregation roadmap where the goal is not just 1 year deduction, but multi-year, multi-property strategy. In the next lessons, we will keep building on that picture so you can see cost seg as a core building block in the way you grow, manage, and eventually exit your real estate portfolio.